He's been building champions since hair metal ruled the world. You're listening to the Coach Robb Podcast.
All right, Coach Robb Podcast listeners, we have a huge show for you today. Coach Robb rode his bicycle from Florida all the way up to Atlanta, Georgia today to join us. Studios A and B have merged for the first Coach Robb Podcast in person. Welcome, Coach Robb, to Atlanta, brother.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing awesome, man. How was that bike ride? Tailwind, headwind, what'd you have?
It was, you know how it is headwind uphill the whole way. You know how that works. But a short 9-hour bike ride, and we're here.
Wow. Well, actually, tell everybody what you're doing. You're actually in Georgia for a reason, not just for this.
We're actually over in Brunswick, Georgia.
Yeah.
For the rest of the week, we are hosting 2 camps. We're doing a 2-day camp at the Gibbs Motocross facility, which has now been branded as a Moto E facility.
Cool.
And then we're going to do another 3-day camp Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's all for our Moto E riders.
Okay.
And it's specific to Daytona.
Wow, that is awesome because that's a big week. The East Coast swing for Supercross has moved over to this coast, so everybody, this East Coast is popping with camps and stuff, so it's very cool. Moto E, very specific riders have that camp. What's it, Jessup, Georgia, or outside of Brunswick?
Right outside Brunswick, yeah.
Wow, so that's very cool. This is neat for us because we've always talked about you coming up here and doing the show in person, and now we have to worry about phone connections, cell service, nothing. This is the pure audio quality people expect when they listen to the Coach Robb Podcast.
Well, like you and I talked about, it may get so good this is going to have to be a regular thing.
Well, I can tell you this. We talked about the topics for this one being a special one, and the 2-week food challenge was so popular when we first launched this podcast back in 1976 that we thought we're going to bring this thing back. Like the 70s, the Camaros, the T-Tops. Let's go ahead and do this. The Bandit edition, the Trans Am, the two-week food challenge. For people that are new listeners that didn't catch that, give us the parameters of the 2-week food challenge and how they can succeed in this spring getting into bikini shape.
The big key with the 2-week food challenge is we're trying to get people to understand how their body has become so incredibly dependent on simple sugars and white starches.
Okay.
And if you go through the 2-week food challenge, what we're trying to do is get you to clean up your refrigerator. Let's clean up that pantry. Get rid of all of those temptations that, as we always tease about, you come home from school and you're like a Tasmanian devil.
Yeah.
You come home from work, you're a Tasmanian devil.
So set yourself up to succeed, because if you have those temptations there, I mean, your human nature is going to dictate that you're going to fail at least half the time, maybe a third of the time.
I'd say at least a third of the time for sure.
Okay.
And it's one of those situations where we like to educate our listeners as to what is going on. Coming in and feeling like a Tasmanian devil, if you understand it's because low blood sugar, and you realize you're going to go grab convenience, a box, a bag, a can of something, well, of course, the pantry and the refrigerator is stocked with it. You and I have teased about this off the record as well as on the air together. Nobody makes a commitment to their health and wellness and says, screw it, I'm just going to go to a drive-thru.
Yeah.
They don't have something in their cooler in the front seat of their truck. They don't have something in the refrigerator at work.
Yeah.
So they're like, all right, now I'm starving. So I'm going to end up peeling off and going into
What is the worst, if you think about this, when you're desperate, when you're going through the cabinet, what's the worst? I have actually gotten to the point of eating like Nestle Toll House chocolate chips that like my mom had, like that were stale, that were white. They had like the white crust on them.
Absolutely.
Anything to fulfill that sugar crush that you're looking for. So I can imagine going through. You're eating stale crackers, Doritos. I mean, anything you can find, even though it's outdated.
Those stale potato chips. I think you summed it up right there.
Yeah.
Ordinarily or normally you'd be like, there's no way I'm eating that, but you're so low blood sugar driven, you're like, I'll chew on the rubber potato chips.
And you will dump the bag into your mouth with the salt and the 40 grams of fat on the bottom of the bag as well. So set yourself up for success by having things around you to, when you have those urges, to go ahead and satisfy them.
Well, and I think that the word that you just said right there, the urge, is what we want people to really focus on. When people understand, I always say it this way, it's not like you go to work or school and you go and you run for 8 hours. Mm-hmm. Let's say someone who's a student, somebody that's at work, but yet when you leave school, you're completely drained.
Yeah.
So when
it's like a job, yeah.
Exactly. And so when I get into the realm of human performance, people get caught up and say, oh, that's only relevant to an athlete. Really?
Yeah.
Last time I checked, when I was in 4th grade, I wasn't getting paid to be an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got home, I had the same characteristics as a 12, 15, 22-year-old.
Yeah.
What's going on? Your brain gets fed by its liver. So when you're in school all day, you're in work all day, that stored blood sugar, glycogen, from your liver is feeding the brain. Well, eventually that gas tank runs out.
Yeah.
Then what ends up happening is we do move around at work, but obviously not like a full-time athlete. So between your muscle sugar being drained, your liver sugar being drained, that's what we call the Tasmanian devil environment. You can't get in the door quick enough, and then when you do, it's the convenience.
My mom had to put a lock on the refrigerator because you come home, two teenage boys would come home and just tear up 8,000 calories. We're like Phelps,
Absolutely.
just going through the cabinet. She's like, I can't afford to feed you guys as much as you're eating when you come home from school, especially two, puberty-driven boys coming home from high school.
Well, and I don't want to get confusing at all, but you have to realize that, let's say that you and your brother were like on the best behavior and you're committed to your health and your fitness and all that, and you go in there and you grab a bag full of carrots and some celery, and maybe you make yourself a salad, and let's say there's some leftover grilled chicken in there. You're doing the right thing from a quality standpoint, but when you realize the caloric density of what you just consumed is probably only 200 calories.
Yeah.
And like you just said, you're still looking for 3,000 calories because you're an empty tank. And that's the dangerous part. When I say dangerous, maybe that's not a good adjective. The difficult part for a lot of people, and I'm gonna get somewhat sexist here, not in a derogatory way. Women in particular have been marketed to that they have to curb what they eat. They're orally fixated, they're always eating, whether it's a piece of gum, piece of candy. So what ends up happening is now they go into this idea of, I'm gonna eat real raw food, and I'm gonna eat lean protein, but what they don't realize is there's not enough calories, so the volume of food goes up, and that's when it starts to screw with them mentally. Because they start thinking to themselves, see, there's that little bird on my shoulder just chirping, I'm a glutton, I'm always eating. Well, you should be grazing every 2 hours. We've talked about that on the show all the time.
Right.
You should be eating every 2 hours. But if you've been told by a loved one, a dad, a colleague, oh look, you're always eating. Oh man, that kind of sets a bad tone, puts a negative connotation on
eating disorders all over the place,
because of that exact thing.
Yeah.
So what we want to be careful of is anybody who's listening that says, you know what, I'm going to really make a commitment to myself, because that's what I hope they realize. It's really to themselves. I'm going to do the right things to drop the body fat for sure, for good, forever. I'm going to make sure that I'm getting the healthy body from the inside out. We'll talk about that in the show today. But the idea here is they first got to knock that little canary off their shoulder, because what they keep seeing and what they keep hearing is, man, I'm just always eating. Well, I'm going to kind of talk about myself and the same person here. Well, Coach Robb's telling me I should eat every 2 hours. Do you know why, Martha, I'm asking you to eat every 2 hours?
Yeah.
Tim, do you know why I'm asking you to eat every 2 hours? Stabilizing blood sugar before it drops is the key. So when I'm asking somebody to eat every 2 hours, and somebody's been told you always are eating, you're a glutton, all the negative connotation, boy, that's a major mental struggle.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to embrace people with, is the knowledge, be able to answer the question why. It's like you and I talking about when, let's just kind of change gears real quick, go into the performance realm when this hit, high intensity interval training.
CrossFit stuff?
Yeah. CrossFit stuff. That's the big fad right now. On paper, yes. If you load the tissue up, it will release the growth hormone, and you get hyper lean or get very buff. You're right. 99.9% of the people that are trying to do CrossFit don't sleep enough and don't eat enough. So that's why I shy away from it. Does it work? Yes. But again, if we're it's like a VO2 max assessment. I get this all the time. Should I know my VO2 max number? No. I think it's completely irrelevant. Now I know I'm going to get a bunch of emails. That's okay, bring it. The reason why I say it is, if I'm doing a VO2 max assessment, they're putting me in a clinical environment. Air conditioned, humidity's controlled, and unfortunately it's not very sport specific. If you're Lance and they're going to do you on a biker, some relevancy, but a pro motocrosser, pro wakeboarder, doesn't make sense. Here's my point. For you to go through a VO2 max assessment and know that your number went from a 38 to a 40, I'm just using some random numbers here, that's relevant if you're sitting in a clinical environment. Let's take motocross. How's that relevant to the middle of the summer, burning motorcycle, a zillion degrees, 100% humidity, 105 degrees? That's just trackside temp, not in your gear, but yet I'm being tested on a VO2 max. I want to bring that full circle. This is what I don't like about somebody saying X is the way. Let's say it's CrossFit or even super slow in its day. To me, it's all about the why behind what you're doing. Like, for example, I'm not going to name any names, but there's some new companies that have started up where they're jumping you on a bike and they have a heart rate monitor on you and they want you to keep it up in a certain zone. If you understand the energy matrix, and I'm going to pull some notes from all of our different podcasts, because I want to make sure that the people that have been following us don't feel like it's redundant, so they see where it's all relevant. Somebody that's new for the first time, they'll be able to put it together quickly. When you look at the energy matrix, if you think about when you're going nice and aerobic, we call it the talk test. You're biking, you're running, you're doing whatever you're doing, and you're not running out of breath, you're on the low end of the energy matrix. As you start to bring that intensity up, start to run out of breath, we call it ventilation threshold. When you start getting into that upper end, here's what I want the new listeners to understand. The lower the intensity, more stored body fat, there's a key word, stored body fat, used for fuel. The higher the intensity, the more stored sugar you're using.
Yes, a revelation that we've had on the podcast is the lower intensity. If you want to just lose weight, it's low intensity. It's not high intensity.
And if I may run on that thread of thought for a second, what irritates the shit out of me is people will go in here and say, well, but my heart rate monitor shows I burnt more calories. You're exactly right. My question is, where did they source from? Now, let's stay on subject here for just a moment. If somebody tells me they want to get better at anaerobic threshold, then go do your HIIT intervals.
Yeah, sprint.
Yeah. If you're telling me that your frustration is, I can't drop these unwanted pounds of body fat, because muscle weighs more than fat. Notice I don't care what the scale says. We use a scale for inflammation and swelling.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at true body measurements, body composition, dropping unwanted body fat, well, if you came to me and said you want to burn body fat, pull the intensity down. But that's not sexy. It's not sizzling. It doesn't make people go, oh, this is exciting and new, because it's so simple.
Well, people equate pain with losing, and when they don't have that reward pain cycle, then they feel that they're not doing enough. Because when people, everybody, we've seen the feedback from the podcast too, is when they do start these programs, they go out at 119%, they blow up, they're sore, it's counterintuitive, and then they quit. So I think most people, for me anyway, from the podcast, one of the big key points is talking about low intensity for losing weight. And like for myself, when walking the dog with my wife, as opposed to a run, I guarantee you I don't feel like I'm doing as much. But you made me feel a whole lot better, because as much as I want to walk 120 yards in front of my wife, just anything to get my heart rate up, I do realize that low intensity does have a role in staying in shape. So if you do both of those things, that's great. But I totally agree with you that for the low intensity stuff, that's for the masses. This should be great news for people.
Well, but let's run with what you just said there, because you have like 5 things that I think everybody needs to pay attention to. Number one is the psychosomatic side. You get that endorphin high when you haul the mail running.
Yeah.
Both you and I talk about that all the time. We solve the world's problems, come back, we're better partners, we're everything.
Yeah.
So let's not confuse that. The second side is, when you're out there, as you say, walking the dog, imagine to any of the listeners that go to a theme park.
Yeah.
You're not running from location to location, but how hungry do you get out of 8 or 10 hours of just nothing but walking? We have what's called
cotton candy, yum.
Yeah. Well, and what I find interesting is a lot of times people will crave stuff like ice cream and burgers,
Sure.
protein heavy stuff, and they don't even realize their body's talking to them. In our general fitness weight loss division, we have what's called a 3-2-1 challenge. It's what we call resetting the fat point. You get up on a Saturday, you walk for 3 hours. You get up on Sunday, you walk for 2 hours, and you get up on Monday and you walk for 1 hour. If you'll do that 3 consecutive days, you will completely reset your fat point.
Right.
It's very easy to do. It's a little mentally taxing. Go out and walk for 3 hours for somebody like yourself that's very, dynamic. But with the approval of your physician, I would challenge anybody who's listening to go out and walk for 3 hours and tell me how you feel 3 hours later. And then get up tomorrow morning and do it again for 2 hours and do it again the third day. You will have leveraged so much stored body fat. You'll feel it, you'll see it. I mean, and biochemically, things have started to change. But the idea here is, if we go back to what you said just in general comment, you like to go for your run, so it makes you feel better. This argument that it burns more calories, I will agree and then disagree. Based on your heart rate monitor, where was your intensity during that run, telling me and you both, where did you source your calories from? Then the third component would be your ability to be able to do it again tomorrow, because you said they go out so gun ho that they're so sore. So there's the there's the built-in failure, if I may use that word cautiously. You set yourself up for failure,
Right.
not success, because you went so hard. Now the residual soreness is horrible. The euphoric, like you say, the pain cycle, well, the pain becomes associated with all that activity. It almost becomes to the point where people think they can't enjoy it.
Yeah.
If I enjoyed it, it must have not gone hard
Right,
enough.
exactly, yeah.
So that's where it gets in a vicious cycle. So the thing that we always want to be taking a look at is, and this is where I want people to understand the 2-week food challenge at 2 levels. I'm going to kind of go fast forward and then come right back, and this is what I mean. If you'll trust me and you'll eat fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, and lean protein, and you'll do that every 2 hours, from the moment you wake
It's
up.
hard, it's so hard.
It is hard.
Rob, I've tried that.
It's hard.
It is not natural for me.
But the hard part is, I would rather you be proactive and let that be your, what I call the gravitational pull, because
Yeah.
until you make that a routine, that's gravitational pull.
Yeah.
You're a pilot, you know what it's like when you leave the ground. That's the hardest part. So if I can get people to understand eating fruits and vegetables and lean protein every 2 hours from the minute you wake up, you will get your body to start burning stored body fat for fuel. This whole intermittent fasting and all that, there's some credibility to it.
Yeah.
I think it gets taken out of context, just like HIIT training has done. But here's what I want people to understand. When you eat fruits and vegetables, you get lots of water. Everybody knows that. They also get a lot of electrolytes. People don't realize that. Well, electrolytes is what you lose in your sweat. So before you even go exercise, by eating fruits and vegetables, you load up on electrolytes. Help muscle contraction. They help with sweating. They help with digestion. So second benefit. The third benefit is, and this is where I want people that are taking notes to really hone in. When you do higher incremental intensity, obviously your respiration increases. You create what we call oxidative stress. It's just a byproduct of converting more oxygen as part of that whole Krebs cycle, and it's very technical, and I won't go deep. But just understand that as your heart rate goes up, you create more metabolic waste. For the motorheads that listen to us, you just keep progressively opening the throttle, more is coming out the exhaust.
Okay.
So the thing here is, as they bring the intensity up, there's a ton of metabolic waste inside the body. It's known as free radicals. All of our listeners have heard free radicals in online articles and magazines and TV shows. Everyone's, what the hell is a free radical, right? So if I can tell you that high intensity training increases the production of free radicals, but before you even got there, if you snack on fruits and vegetables, guess what they're high in? Antioxidants. I want everybody to listen, because I've had probably 1,000 people that will call me and say, what the hell is a free radical? Oxidative stress creates free radicals. Fruits and vegetables are high in antioxidants. Oxidating what? Oxidative stress. No one really sees how these come back full circle.
Okay.
Because what they want to do is say, oh, you got to get your free radicals up. People are, again, not to be redundant, the hell's a free radical? If you don't understand that free radicals are a byproduct of high intensity training, no one sees the importance of the fruits and vegetables. So I want people to understand, I'm not advocating it because it's a platform. To me, it's a built, what am I selling you? I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm trying to get you to understand, make fruits and vegetables a priority for electrolytes, water, antioxidants. Then you go out and you exercise, and this goes full circle to what you just said. Now when they're done working out, their body's already been preloaded with the rebuilding components, protein, carbs, vegetables, complex carbs from fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
Before they even put the exercise in, their body's already ready to offset the negative side effects, soreness, the amino acids from protein, the antioxidants from fruits and vegetables. They're not dehydrated because they're prehydrated. It's a self-correcting mechanism.
All right, to keep this focus for the 2-week challenge, though, so we talk about getting rid of all the junk food, all the things in your cabinet that would be a lure for failure. You talk about eating healthy and getting that first step, and then let's go ahead and progress to the next step of the 2-week challenge. So what are we doing?
So what we want to do is, after you get through that 2-week food challenge and you stabilize your blood sugar, anybody who has gotten a copy of my, and I encourage any new listener, please reach out to us, contact@coachrob.com. We'll send you the 2-week food challenge. Once you've gone through that 2-week food challenge, what we've done is, before you started, you took your body measurements. Now, 2 weeks later, you've taken your body measurements. Part of the outline is we ask that you don't do anything anaerobic, which includes strength training.
Mm-hmm.
What we're trying to do is reduce the overall stress, the inflammation, and the swelling,
Okay.
byproduct of training. And what we do is we take the body measurements 2 weeks later. I've never once had somebody that didn't lose significant inches.
All right, so how are we mixing exercise with the food challenge? What are you telling people to do?
What they're going to be asked to do is between 30 and 60 minutes of low intensity training, walking, spin bike. And for somebody who, quote unquote, doesn't come from a fitness background,
Yeah.
just simply walk and be able to talk. That's
Okay.
the talk test. Don't have to buy a heart rate monitor, just simply walk for 30
So the
minutes.
2-week challenge, you're also asking for how many days a week of this exercise?
Maybe 2 to 3.
Okay.
It's all predicated off of what they were doing before they came in. So
Okay.
someone like yourself that runs 5-6 days a week, keep running,
Mhm.
but run in heart rate zone 2.
Mhm.
If you can't stay in heart rate zone 2, walk.
Mhm.
The other side of the coin is no weight training to reduce the inflammation and swelling. And then what we do is we look at body composition. That's why we take body measurements,
Okay.
either with tape measure or calipers. Boom. Here's the cool part. If David has been running 5 days a week in heart rate zone 2 or less, and for the new listeners, David trains with a heart rate monitor. He knows his heart rate zones. There's obviously some foreknowledge there.
It's about 215.
There you go.
218.
There you go.
That's my
Walk pace.
that's my comfort zone.
Yeah. So you go out and you run 4 or 5 days like normal, and the only thing that we've changed, because here's where the information really becomes fun, the only new variable in your equation is we've changed what you've eaten and how often. I call it the QQ coefficient. Increase the quality of food, increase the quantity of food, i.e. every 2 hours.
Mhm.
You're running 5 days a week, heart rate zone 2. Then what we do is we look at how your body has changed.
Okay, so after that, the measurements, that's what we took the
Yeah.
measurements, so
But here's the key. Remember, we're looking at body measurements with tape measure and calipers, not the scale. Because if you put on muscle, it's going to weigh more because muscle weighs more than fat. And here's something that I get a lot of pushback on. I would say 50% of the people that we pick up on our program, they already come into our program dehydrated.
So you're already adding, people are going to be pissed when they step on the scale and gain 4 pounds. You're like, what am I doing?
You hit the nail on the head. And they do it for 2 reasons. If you've been listening to us for any period of time, very simple formula. Take your body weight, divide it by 2. That's how many ounces of water over 8 to 10 hours. Right there, people are going to put on 4 or 5 pounds.
Mhm.
Then you add adding fruits and vegetables, which have a high water content. Now part of the water retention, part of the glycogen retention is the retention of water. Your body stores 2.8 grams of water. From
Okay.
every carbohydrate it converts to stored sugar in the glycogen form. So when somebody says to me, oh, see, Rob, what he said on the podcast didn't materialize. I gained weight. You gained weight on a scale.
Mhm.
Show me your body measurements.
Yeah.
Because if you carry fat in your belly, I guarantee it's down. If you carry it in your face, I guarantee you're seeing it. Most likely you'll see it in your belt buckles. So what we want to do is, David's been running 5 days a week. He's been making sure he's properly hydrated, eating fruits and vegetables. We look at the only variable that he's really changed is his food. How did the body change? Boom, there's the end of 2-week food challenge phase 1. When we go into phase 2, the question comes into, so what do I do? Not to be sarcastic or condescending, exactly what you've been doing, with one caveat. Find one item that you feel like you just couldn't live without during that 2-week food challenge and add only that one item. I've given this example before, but I think it's a good one. We had a lady that on the 2-week food challenge, she took herself off coffee.
Mhm.
Black coffee can be on the challenge.
Yeah.
There's no adverse side effects. But she took it out. That was her choice. When she put it back in, she ballooned up. She said, see, Rob, I told you, coffee makes me fat. It was the artificial sweeteners in her creamer that she was having an adverse reaction to. She ballooned up.
Hmm.
But here's the takeaway. If she had put 7 items in on that first week, we wouldn't know which of those and or the combos cause that inflammation and swelling, because that's really what ended up happening. She had an adverse reaction to the artificial sweetener in the creamer. She bloats up.
Right.
So guess what? She does that for 3 days, sees and feels it. We take the one item out. Immediately you can fix the problem. The more variables you add in, it's an exponential nightmare.
And you're not a calorie counter too. Explain that, because I know that when we talk about 2-week food challenge, people think, well, how many calories? I mean, I know that you're more about quality as opposed to counting calories.
Well, let's be honest. Most everybody's too busy.
Mhm.
So to ask somebody to start getting an app out and start counting calories and don't supersede 1,900 calories and make sure you get 20, that's a full-time job.
I went on vacation with my mother-in-law several years ago, and she was on one of those damn things where you count the numbers.
Count your points, count your blocks, count everything.
I almost slapped those things right out of her damn hand.
Exactly.
To be around somebody who has been devolved into doing that, I don't know how you can live and not go insane, because that to me would be counterintuitive to success, is the added stress of freaking adding. I'm like, Just eat and
Exactly.
walk.
Exactly. And I like the word that you use, the stress of it.
Yes, it's stress of everybody around you.
Everybody around you. And this, if anybody's listening, and I hope they're doing it with an open mind, all we've talked about so far is stress. You go to work or school, you're working your brain hard, you react to stress.
Yeah.
You go to the gym, you go balls to the wall, you react to stress. Now all of a sudden you're going to start counting calories and grams and blocks and all this other stuff. And when I've got somebody who says, look, Rob, I don't have enough time to go for a 30-minute walk, but then they give me this 200-day food log of blocks.
Yeah.
I'm like, you could have walked around the earth by the time you got that finished.
Yeah.
That's insane. So for me, and this comes from the Olympic Training Center, when I was there for the sport of triathlon, the thing that I want people to understand is their general rule of thumb is take your body weight and add a 0. That pretty much represents what your basal metabolic needs are, calorically. So if you're 150 pounds, 1,500 calories is going to get you through a day, sustaining life, staying healthy. What we say with our athletes is a general, very general rule of thumb is just take that number now, double it. 150-pound person, that's 1,500 calories, double it.
For 5,000 calories.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. For the new math. Somehow it comes back full circle. Now, the beautiful part, and I want to talk a little bit about this, is not right now, but I want to come back to heart rate monitors.
Okay.
I want to make sure that we talk about heart rate monitors here. But when it comes back to the calorie side of things, this is where there's a self-correcting mechanism. If you've gotten up and you've eaten every 2 hours since you've woken up, and please listen, if you got hungry before that 2-hour window, you didn't eat enough the last time you ate. So this is how we're starting to take phase number 2 and help people start to understand, how do I create a customized nutrition program where I have stabilized sugar, I have good mental clarity at work and school, athletically I perform well. If those things are all working, why would you want to deviate from that? Now you say to yourself, okay, I really miss my waffles in the morning. That's a popular one with the young kids. Here's my school of thought. Once the young athlete has 4 eggs, a piece of fruit, and 8 ounces of water, which he or she's been doing, if they're still hungry after they eat that, they can have the whole box of waffles. You and I both realize after somebody eats 4 eggs, a piece of fruit, and 8 ounces of water, there's not much hunger left in the tank.
They're going to shit their pants on the school bus, is what you're trying to get them to do.
Well, here's the thing that's so interesting, coming back to what you said about calories. If an extra large egg only has 75 calories and they eat 4, there's 300 calories. A piece of fruit, let's just give it 100 calories and say it's a banana, that's your whole breakfast is 400 calories. But the volume of food, when somebody, again, I go back to the female that's been mentally messed with, who sees that much volume of food, that little canary's like, look at you, look at all that food.
Yeah.
I'm going to use this word you're a pig, look at all, that's the kind of stuff, that's a feedback I get from clients. I'm like, man, it guts me. Somebody called you a pig? So when somebody's trying to do the right thing and they eat 4 eggs, and just FYI, the reason why, unless you have some kind of allergic reaction to eggs, eggs are ideal because the amino acid profile is indexed at 100%. All protein sources are indexed against an egg. That's why I always go with the eggs. They're convenient, they're low in calories, but they work. Now the question always comes up, can I do scrambled, hard-boiled? You can do them any way you want. Now,
And don't take the yolks out.
do not take the yolks out
That's a
because
good
there's
part.
aminos in the yolks that are not in the white, vice versa.
And what about white versus brown eggs? Any difference?
Well, I would say usually the brown eggs are better. I don't know if it's psychosomatic because most of those are free range. It's funny, when Michaela and I were in Australia, the place that we were staying at, they had live, farm fresh eggs. And it was interesting, some came in blue, some came in purple. And I said,
Nope.
Well, here's the thing.
I'm not eating a purple egg
But-
out of a chicken's ass. I don't work.
But I went the other way. I thought, wait a second, if it's coming off the field,
No.
what's in our grocery store that's perfectly white?
Because they
Pearly white.
probably bleach them.
That's exactly it. And that's why I said to Michaela, I was like, oh my gosh, this kind of went the opposite direction. It was like, this purple egg doesn't bother me as much as our polished white ones back at home.
It's like the old dipped in the thing and
Yes,
the Easter eggs.
yeah. And so when we got back from Australia, as you know, I tend to be a little bit of an analytics freak. And I'm like cracking eggs on the side and I start seeing this white film come off the side of the eggs. And I said to Michaela, I was like, this is what we were wondering about. And literally after I cracked the eggs on the side of the bowl or the cooking pan, there's like this white powder around the edge. And I said, this scares me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we're fortunate. We get all our stuff, most frequently from a farm that's local. But to your point, when we're looking at the volume of food, that's why I don't count calories. If you got hungry, guess what? you simply didn't eat enough the last time you snacked or mealed. I always use those kind of interchangeably. I don't say this is breakfast, this is a snack. To me, breakfast is a snack is breakfast. I don't care.
So, but to clarify for people, and people know this too, is what I've learned from the podcast, and I'm lucky enough to be in relatively decent shape for my age, and I do stay active, all that stuff, but I find it very hard to stick to 100% of everything that we talk about on the podcast. So don't let yourself think, okay, if I don't do this 100%, then that's a failure. Allow yourself the flexibility to do percentages and do that stuff. Because for me, from the feedback from the audience and people I've talked to, especially in professional sports, is there's this, I don't know if it's even, the expectations are even realistic for a lot of people, what they want to do with the Instagram models and these influencers they talk about.
Yeah.
They're bombarded with these things of perfection, and we can go into to talk about, you know, the people's confidence and self-awareness and self-confidence and stuff like that. But for me, just live within what you can do. If you go 3 weeks out of the month and you're doing 80% of what we talk about, or 80% of your goals, that is awesome.
It sure is.
I mean, like for you, when we talk about like eating every 2 hours, I've tried it. I can't stand eating every 2 hours. It does not work for me. I can also fast whenever I want. I'm this enigma. My wife has to eat 3 squares a day. When we travel, she just looks at me. She's like, "How can you?" I don't want to poop on a plane, so I'm not adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
When we land, I'll eat.
Yeah.
So we talk about this stuff. So for me, I can almost like a bear. I can just shut so I can fast for a whole day if I have to, whatever. So I've tried this 2 hour stuff, and to me, I feel bloated. I felt like I was forcing myself. I'm not hungry.
Yep.
So there are aspects you can take and say if it's not every 2 hours, maybe it's every 3 or every 4 or something like that, where you don't let your blood sugar drop.
Exactly.
So I want to get across that you and I talked about this when we started the podcast, is to come to the people, the real people, and find a way to succeed and give them realistic goals to set there. But if you don't reach those goals, it's not a failure. You are nothing more than just hitting the reset button, and then this is a new day, a new week, moving forward. So I want to get that across to our audience, because we've gotten too much feedback from people where we see they're inundated with basically just being judged all the time on this stuff. And then the Baskin Robbins flavors of the month between diets and the new programs, people are just confused. So when you do a 2 week food challenge and you're talking about getting rid of the junk, getting back to the basics, getting your measurements done, seeing where you fall into those things, and seeing how it's working with your body. This is how you start. This is the most basic way you can do it, is get rid of the junk, surround yourself with ways to succeed.
Yep.
Go 2 weeks. Give yourself 7, 10, 14 days to see if this cleansing and this hitting the reset button on your body is a good way to start. And what we're talking about, I think you've had enough success over your decades career that this is a great place for anybody to start, whether you're getting back into something, whether you're 100 pounds overweight.
Yep.
I mean, this is a great ground, a good ground zero.
Well, I want to take it just a step further. What I find I don't know, Michaela hears me complain about this all the time. I don't understand where the human brain is at. You're coming to our office frustrated with what hasn't worked. You give me this plethora of, as you call them, these various systems, programs, and I'm not calling one out. I don't care if it's Zone, Atkins, South Beach. It doesn't matter what it is, as you and I always refer to.
They make billions off of promises and unrealistic goals for people.
All right, so I'm going to go on a bunny trail here, because you just said the key word, the financial side of this. We said a little bit earlier, if you're taking notes, please write this down. When you eat a fruit or a vegetable, we refer to that as a carbohydrate. When your body converts that to stored sugar in the form of glycogen, we just said that the brain gets its energy from the liver. It's from stored glycogen in the liver. When you exercise or move, you get that from the stored sugar in the muscles. Keep it simple. You eat carbs, it stores in the form of glycogen, kept in the liver and the muscles. Done. When you look at Atkins, South Beach, Zone, all of these, what's the only thing that they guarantee? That you will lose 10 pounds in the first week.
Yeah, you'll be like a prisoner.
Now here's your second note that you need to write down. If your body if your body retains 2.8 grams of water for every gram of carbohydrate that you consume, well, I can guarantee you 10 pounds by doing what? Don't let you eat what's going to cause the water retention.
Right.
So the scale says you're down 10 pounds.
Yeah.
I've said it on the show several times. I can put you in a parking lot in a car with the windows rolled up in the middle of summer, and I can get 10 pounds off of you.
Yeah.
But that's not weight loss, that's dehydration.
You wonder why all the stars, when they leave these award shows, they all go to In-N-Out Burger. Because they have been starving
That's
themselves
right.
and keeping no sodium, so there's zero water retention to squeeze their asses into those
That's right.
outfits. And then they're just like, I need protein.
Yep, but you just hit something that's really important, the word stress yet again. What people have to understand is when your body is in a chronic mode of dehydration, that's stress. When you're overtraining, lifting too much weight, running too fast, too hard, too long, that's stress. When you're a calorically restricted diet, that's stress. Now here's what I want the new listeners to understand. When the body's in a mode of stress, it produces a product called cortisol. Cortisol is kind of that
Stress hormone,
fight or
yeah.
flight hormone that we all know. But what happens is I always give the example, you've got an 8-ounce cup of an 8-ounce glass filled with cortisol, but your body's producing 10, 12, 15 ounces. That surplus goes on your butt as body fat. This is why, and I just got a very cool, anybody that follows me on social media, there was a gentleman who had left a comment on one of my pictures, and it was on one of my heart rate evaluations. It literally made my day. He said, I've been a firefighter for years, always struggled with weight, never understood why until you and David's podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you, it saved my life.
Yeah.
And I literally put on there, you just made my day.
Wow.
Because when you look at physicians and firefighters and police officers, they're up when they should be asleep, they're asleep when they should be awake, the circadian rhythm gets thrown off, and that stress, once again, causes them to gain a lot of weight. Then they live on nicotine and caffeine, most of them, and then you add convenience foods.
Chili. Firehouse chili.
Firehouse
Kevin Kelly eats some firehouse chili.
So when you look at their schedule, and you look at the circadian rhythms, and you look at the fact that they're eating the wrong things at the wrong time, it's a Molotov cocktail.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to what you said. When someone's feeling like they're quote-unquote failing, as we use that term, how can you say that you're failing when you're doing what you know is right? I mean, I say that I'm not God. I didn't make fruits, I didn't make vegetables, I didn't make lean protein. So these aren't my items. What I'm saying is, I'm advocating, how does somebody come to me and say that I got fat eating fruits, vegetables, and lean protein? It's completely an oxymoron.
Yeah.
For two reasons. One, it's already low in calories. So when you want to go on your calorie binge and start arguing with me about it, you just argued yourself into your own corner. Fruits and vegetables and lean protein are low in calories. I'm not asking you to eat a high calorie diet. The second side is, you've tried all of the extremes. I don't care what the extreme is. High fat, no fat, low fat, high fat, protein, no protein. I don't care, carb, no carb. You just told me that you're already overwhelmed, you don't have time to exercise, and you want to come in and debate with me, which I'm happy to do if you're willing to listen. You want to debate on the fruits, vegetables, and lean protein is too confusing, too complicated. How did that happen? You just told me that all this other stuff you did caused you to get so frustrated you quit, which I don't ever want.
I think people are just so skeptical, Rob. I think they realize that they have tried all these quick fix methods that haven't worked, and then when they hear one more, it might make perfect sense, but it's almost like they have to go through the 2 weeks to even try to understand it, because until they see the results, they're not going to believe it. So,
but here's where I have a hard time with it. If you turn that oven on and it's bright red and you say don't touch it, it's hot. I'm not going to touch it, and if I do touch it, you're going to be like, are you surprised?
yeah.
And I'm not being condescending towards anybody. What I'm saying is, how do you argue with real raw food, stabilized every 2 hours? It's just more of a cadence is what we're trying to get to there. It's kind of like when I was riding my bicycle up from Orlando last night, I've got to eat calories before I run out of calories. I've got to stay hydrated before. We always say...
All right, for your drive up here, how long did it take you to get here from Savannah?
From Savannah, right at 4 hours.
Okay. How much did you eat between here and there?
Well, before we left, I had a seafood omelet,
Okay.
which had crab.
Blah.
It had shrimp, crabs, scallops.
Are you insane?
That was breakfast.
Dude, that is so that makes me want to. I've never even heard of a seafood omelet. Did you make that up?
No.
Did you put gross avocado on it
If
too?
I could have gotten some, I would have for sure.
A seafood omelet.
Seafood omelet.
Oh, okay. So go ahead. First of all, that is the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. But go
So
ahead.
there's 5 forms of protein there,
Okay.
because you've got eggs, you've got scallops, you've got shrimp, and they had lobster in
If
it.
you keep it down, good for you.
Okay. And then with that, I had some wheat toast,
Okay.
with butter on it.
Yeah.
And then I had a cup of grits with butter in it.
What was it at a hotel?
Yeah, this sounds arrogant. It's at a real high-end hotel.
Okay.
That has a great restaurant.
Okay, good. So I'm saying because you can't find that at like a Waffle House.
No, not at all. But my point is, it's a source of protein.
Okay, so
it
then
doesn't
now
matter if
there's
it's
4
an
hours.
omelet.
There's a 4 hours between here. So what'd you eat in the 2 hours between here?
So we have blueberries, blackberries, and strawberries, and we just pop them up like we washed them, we put them in there,
Okay.
and then 2 bottles of water. That's why when we got to your studio, we're like, restroom please, our bladder. Now we don't have that flight bladder like you have, so that's what we over the course of 2 hours. Then the idea is, and I know we sound a little anal, but like when we leave here, we'll go straight to lunch. We don't get caught up on emails and text messages because we know it'll be a good 3 hours before we're done here.
So as an example, you had a substantial meal. When you talk about every 2 hours, you're talking about throwing a couple blueberries, almonds in your mouth. You're not talking, okay.
Maintenance, that's all it is.
Because I think people are thinking that you need to have like a mini meal every 2 hours, and that's not the case.
No, I always like to try to have some form of protein in there.
Yeah.
So it'll be mixed nuts and, like you say, maybe some blackberries or maybe a banana and some almond butter.
Okay.
I like what you say. Keep it simple, but here's where we want all the listeners to have the full framework.
Yeah.
You've gone through phase 1, and really what it does is it forces your body to detox off of sugar. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
Once you get off that sugar, whether that sugar is coming from white starches or true white sugar or processed sugar for that matter, the idea is now what we do is we want to move into phase 2. Add that one item a week that you just felt like you couldn't live without.
Yeah.
When you get our 2-week food challenge, there's a symptom survey, mental clarity, all kinds. You have GI distress, sleep problems, libido problems, the whole 9 yards. Well, after the 2-week food challenge, you just simply take the survey again. So if the conditions have gotten better, let's say 8 out of 10, we're onto something. Then as you start to add in new items, one at a time per week, you go through the same litmus test. Let's just say hypothetically, I added in wheat toast with raw honey. So the only thing that I do differently is I add the wheat toast with real butter and some honey. I see if I've got that head nod 20 minutes later. If I do, I know that bread was too much. It's got to go. But
So it's basically a process of elimination to get to your ultimate your diet. Okay.
That's all we're trying to do. Because when I say to you, I'm trying to help you build a customized nutrition program, you could eat the wheat toast and have no aversion to it whatsoever. I could eat it and be in comatose in 15 minutes.
So it's detailed to individuals.
Because this is where mainstream media gets out of control. Are you lactose intolerant? Are you this intolerant? Are you, you've got gluten intolerances. You've got, we were just teasing before we started this. When we were kids, I didn't know anybody that had a problem with anything that we ate. And if you, not to be rude, but if you did get diarrhea after drinking milk, you said, I just don't drink milk. You didn't run around saying, I'm lactose intolerant, I've got all these titles and all. Stop. If you get the runs, if you're falling asleep, and I'm not trying to be rude on the show, but it's like if you eat something and you're falling asleep, that's a negative. If you're mentally foggy, that's a negative. If you have GI distress, that's a negative. If you're going out and going for a run and you're looking at your heart rate monitor and you're way off pace, and the only new thing to your program was wheat toast with honey, and I'm just using it as a hypothetical, you could have 2 people have completely different reactions to the same
Is
product.
sugar ever good? Is pure, is that ever, so, because we're talking about, I don't know if you watched the race with, Austin Portman.
Oh, yeah.
He's downing pure sugar granules.
Okay, and Michaela and I were talking about this, and I love this, and thanks for bringing it up. I'm gonna go highly technical because it's so simple.
Okay.
When Austin comes off that bike, and he's been sitting there and by the way, he's not out there, nobody races at maximum heart rate. Because if you could race at maximum heart rate, Usain Bolt will go win the marathon in about an hour.
Right.
Okay, it's metabolically impossible, so stop. So when Austin comes off that track, he's probably close to 85, I'd say even probably 90% of maximum, especially with the 3-race format. A little shorter duration, take the intensity up. Where the science comes in, and you do it every time you run, when you get that exercise engaged, there's a glycogen synthase enzyme that's circulating in your blood. It is a sponge to replenish depleted sugar that he just burned out the back end. So when he throws that pixie stick down, his body grabs that sugar and immediately converts it to stored sugar.
Yeah.
The first part of that pixie stick, depending on how much he depleted himself, is going to fill that gas tank. And once that gas tank gets filled, then it goes, think about it this way.
It's like a recovery drink, but pure sugar.
Well, think about it this way. You have two tanks. You have what's in storage,
Mhm.
i.e. with the days when you and I rode with reserves,
No.
and then you have what you're going to burn right now. When you, let's say you and I hang up on this podcast, we put our shoes on and the three of us go for a run. You're going to burn stored sugar until that stored sugar becomes depleted. That's about 60 to 80 minutes, depending on the person's body composition,
Yeah.
training history, and all of that. So he goes out there, and yes, it's only a 10-minute moto, but it was wide open. He's drained a good amount of those reserves. Well, he's going into replenishment mode.
But
So
why is that important right after he gets done?
because think about what we use for energy. Remember the energy matrix where we drew it? When he gets closer to that 100% effort, what's he burning predominantly? Sugar.
Mhm.
So that's what he's depleted, so that's what he has to replenish. So when the intensity goes up like that, you throw that back, what you're doing is you're replenishing the simple nutrient of sugar, which your muscle and your livers have to be replenished. That's the whole idea.
So sugar is not the Antichrist. I mean, it's something
No.
that your body needs that you can intake.
Absolutely.
There's a place for it.
Absolutely. In fact, when I was at the Olympic Training Center, they are very big on you've got to get raw sugar in your system post-exercise.
Yeah.
The more simplistic the sugar is, i.e. like I'm talking literally white table sugar,
Yeah.
that's what they want in your system.
Yeah.
Now, it's beyond the scope of this podcast, but there's some other studies out there. You know how bad fructose is?
Mhm. That's like the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in a clinical setting, they've proven that fructose will replenish liver glycogen quicker than regular sugar will.
Mhm.
But yet fructose is poison.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's artificial though.
exactly.
Yes.
But my point is, in a clinical setting, they went to this artificial sweetener and said, what is the replenishment in the liver versus the muscle? And it actually was better with fructose. I don't advocate fructose because there's a tremendous amount of
Yeah.
health adverse side
Sure,
effects.
sure.
But my point is, you can't just take one thing as the gospel.
Mhm.
Raw sugar has its place in what we do as individual humans as well as athletes, but it gets convoluted.
Yeah.
Keep it simple,
Yeah.
you know? And that's the thing that I get frustrated with. So when he threw the pixie stick back, everyone's like, oh, it's literally physiology 101.
Mhm.
It's like, let me rephrase it this way. Can you imagine if the mechanic didn't refill the gas tank after the first moto? As elementary as that seems to us.
Mhm.
I mean, they do a sight lab now and they top it off. They're so afraid.
How about fun dips? Those were good.
Oh, those are just bite the little white,
Oh.
whatever that was. I called it chalk.
My mom used to get mad because I would eat all the white.
Yeah.
It's and
And
then
then
I had like
what'd you
12
resort to for the rest of the flavors after you ate the sticks? What'd you do?
Oh yeah. I
Got to
just-
get the finger lick going.
And then you'd mix them all thinking that's going to be awesome, and then just make your eyes water. It'd be so sour. It's like, what have I ruined this?
Your tongue's 16 shades of green and blue and
See,
purple.
so
and
I was way ahead of my time.
Yeah.
Lucky Charms and Fun Dips as a kid. I was just
Sure.
replenishing my sugar. I was burning out.
You
there.
just watch Mitch is going to have pixie sticks on his bike next week.
I'm glad. So this is, I guess, the demons of fitness, with all the bad information that's out there. These people, they demonize stuff, and you talk about, whether it's fructose or the carbs or the glucose. I mean, to me, it's so confusing, and I totally, even before we started this podcast, I totally discounted all that stuff. When somebody says, "Oh, this is the new," nope.
Yep.
Nope, because what I did, I found out through trial and error, through my own, what worked for me, what I could stick to. And I'll tell people this, back, many years ago, I broke both my ankles on one jump, smashed both my ankles. I still have issues with my ankles to this day. But during that recovery process, I gained a lot of weight. I was, I could not exercise. I had 13 surgeries, all this stuff all through the years. And so when I started running, Rob, this is what I would do. I had a 5-mile loop, and I would run 100 yards, and then walk, and then run 100. So I'd remember the tree or the rock where I'd run. So I'd go. So the next day, and I worked my way to running one full lap. It probably took a whole summer to do that. But for me, I'm like, okay, I can't go out here and run a 5-mile loop. I don't want to do it. So I would go. Okay, that tree was my marker.
Yep.
So the next day, if I got 25 more yards past that marker, it was such a slow, but that was me in the middle of the woods,
Yeah.
figuring out on my own that if you can't do it all in one loop, it's just incrementally do it, and instead of coming back feeling like an
That's
idiot,
awesome,
a
yeah.
failure, I'd say, well, at least I made it 25 yards past that rock today. And then I'd do it on the hills. I try to get farther on the hills and things like that. So for me, it was easy to discount the publicity of these things. I look at Good Morning America all the time. My wife watches that, And every week they've got something, but then they'll discount and disprove what they talked about 3 months ago
Right.
that didn't work, and then the harm to your body and,
Yeah.
the long-term effects of things like that. So when I say the Coach Robb podcast, keeping it simple and things you can do, it's also you have to be responsible for your own evolution and your own success. Meaning if you take 3 parts of what we talk about today and you combine it with the 4 parts that you already know work for you and that works for you, then that is part of you succeeding on your own evolution.
That's right. Yep.
And for us, that's a success, because this isn't gospel like you're talking about. You just talked about wheat toast for somebody doesn't work for somebody else. You're not talking. This is not the Bible
Right.
for one individual. So I'm hoping that comes across with you guys. I'm basically being the devil's advocate here, because you're the Google of nutrition, and I'm the realist. I'm the guy that's on the front line saying that didn't work for me,
That's
or
right.
this doesn't work for me. I'm drinking a diet ginger ale right here in front of Rob.
That's
I
right.
don't give a shit, Rob. Look what I'm doing.
That's right.
But he says don't drink. But for me, I have 2 a day.
Yep.
So I don't ever have absolutes. When I go out to dinner with my wife, we had pizza, and I didn't even like that. What's that tiny stuff called? Not gelato.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even like gelato. I end up loving gelato.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
so when we go out to dinner, we always have dessert. I don't ever say I'm not going to have sugar. I'm not going to have whatever. For me, that works.
Yep.
And I don't punish myself and say, oh, I got to do 7 miles today because I had gelato last night. That is not the real world, people. We have jobs, we have travel schedules, we have kids, we have all these things. Do it to a point where you don't feel bad about yourself at the end of the day. If you have a shitty day, you had a shitty
That's
day.
right.
I mean, that's the realism of the world.
Yep.
I mean, I can't even imagine somebody, we were talking about Michaela's 14-year-old daughter, when I was going back into my mind, I'm like, I remember when we had everybody's homework to get done at night.
Yep.
And then as the kids got older, it got harder and harder and harder. I mean, I'm like, I didn't probably exercise for,
Yeah.
for 4 years while they were
No
in school.
time. No time.
So, be realistic about what you have to do every day. Getting
Yeah.
up, going to work, paying your mortgage, getting back and forth, and providing for your family, doing all those things that are important. That, to me, if you can compartmentalize those as your priorities and reduce the stress of failing at nutrition and fitness, that to me would be, because I can tell you what, if I'm in shape and I have a bad marriage, or my kids hate me and I'm not a good dad, what are you doing?
What's it worth?
Yeah, well,
What's it worth?
that's not, so for me to compartmentalize and prioritize those things first, reduce the stress of, if I get to that, then it works, but if my kid's science homework is more important, that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
Because I got an email from someone, I don't know if I even forwarded it to you, about that, and they're like, my kid's homework, I try. He says, I lost like 6 pounds and I gained it all right back. It's the yo-yo stuff.
Yep.
And my email back to him was, dude, you're totally fine. That's exactly what we do, is the yo-yo stuff, but don't look at this as a failure. Look at it as, okay, well, that week was horrible.
Yep.
Let's move on to the next week. I said, all you're doing is hitting the reset button. Don't add this up. It's not like a black book of failures you have to carry for the rest of your life. So,
But see, I like what you keep going back to, the word failure, because, we've talked about this on a previous show. Most everybody works in a punishment. I'm going to punish myself with exercise in the context of our podcast. I'm going to punish myself with exercise because of the guilt I have associated with what I did wrong.
Right.
Drank too much, ate the wrong thing.
Yeah.
That's that little canary I was talking about. And I even said at the beginning of this podcast today, I hope people will do this for themselves first, because then what happens is, address your own frustrations.
Mhm.
Where I'm going with this is, most people are in this guilt punishment mode because of something somebody said to them. Their dad called them a pig, fat, glutton, whatever. We don't realize how bad words hurt, and they stick with us forever. Well, then those words manifest themselves in the way of a bird.
Yeah.
Little canary on your shoulder telling you what
Or
a
a
bad
crow.
person. A crow, yeah. And then it becomes a freaking eagle, and the talons want to rip your head off. The idea here is, I like what you said. What categorizes failure? To me, failure is giving a rat's ass about what somebody else thinks in my world, because I'm doing what I need to do for my family, and I don't care if you agree with that or not. It goes back to that accountability and responsibility, but I want to take it a step further. If you follow us on YouTube, every Monday morning I put out a 1% series. It's no more than a 2-minute video about one thing that you can do today to be better by 1%. I encourage everybody to watch that, not because they want to listen to me talk, I'm trying to give you something that you can do simplistically. The gentleman or the lady that emailed you about doing all the homework, well, did she or he nail their hydration that day? Because if they did, that was a successful day.
If 10's a perfect day and you do a 1, that's better than a 0.
Zero, amen. And that's the problem that we get into is and I know I sound like a psychologist here, it's so easy to focus on what we didn't do than focus on what we did do.
Yeah.
This is why we did the podcast on goal setting is ridiculously wasted time, because what was the person who emailed you's frustration? I can't get to work. I can't get to work out. I can't get to the grocery store to eat what I need to because it's not available. That's not the problem.
Yeah.
That's the frustration.
Right.
Well, what are we going to do next week? Because the kid's still in the same math class. What are we going to do next Wednesday? Well, we know last Wednesday was a hellacious day.
You have to preempt that to try to make.
There's the word.
Yeah.
There's exactly the word. I literally was talking to Jason Wire, one of our new clients, and he has a brand new little one at home, 2 weeks old.
Yeah.
His exact words to me when we were driving here was, I spent all day yesterday getting ready for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
He said, I went to the grocery store, I cooked, I cleaned. He's got 2 little ones, and then he's got a new little infant.
Yeah.
And they all ride and all that, so he's got bikes to prep and all. And his exact words were, I gave up yesterday, Sunday, so I could be ready for the rest of the week. And I'm like, high five, knuckle punch.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
You're setting yourself up to succeed.
Always.
All right, 2-week food challenge. Want to wrap up with any final closing thoughts on that?
Well, let's just stay on task of what we're trying to do here. Step number 1 is get your baseline numbers. Number 2, finish phase 1 and then reevaluate those numbers. When you see what they've done for you, then add 1 item a week and see what that does indefinitely. Because like you said, we don't live in a glass house.
Mm-hmm.
If you come to my house, I've got foods that some people would say aren't considered healthy. That's okay. When Mikhail and I go on a 75-mile bike ride, we come back, you know what we want? Chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah, yeah.
Ray makes homemade chocolate chip cookies. Somebody would say, oh, that's got simple sugars in it. Yep, you're right. After 75 miles, that's exactly what I want.
Absolutes are unsustainable.
No.
You're not.
I don't live in a glass house, and neither should you.
Yeah.
And neither should the listeners, for sure. But with one caveat. If what we're saying to you seems too good to be true, in this one instance in life, it is true.
Right.
Because it's real raw food, shop the perimeter of your store, get out. That's all you got to think about. And if you do it every 2 hours, every 3 hours, whatever your stomach will tolerate, and you evaluate it, if anyone's been listening to us for any long period of time, what's my number 1 question on everything? The why behind why you're doing it. Because if you're doing low intensity training, then you're telling me that you're trying to leverage stored body fat. If you're doing high intensity training, then you're telling me you're trying to be faster at something, anaerobic threshold. If you're telling me that you're in the gym, and I know you're trying to get stronger. If you're telling me you're going to bed an hour early, you understand the importance of HGH and testosterone, which is released naturally in sleep. I could go on for hours here. The idea is everything that we teach is so that people are educated on why to do it. So when the body doesn't respond correctly, they have the self-correcting mechanism.
There you go. Podcast number 30 in the books. Coach Robb, how do people get in contact with you?
If you're on the internet, you can find us at coachrob.com, where you can find all your sports. If you're on
Wait a second, did you just say if you're on the internet, like a grandfather?
Yeah, right, like anybody's not, right?
Hey, if you're
I was
on,
thinking social
if you're on
media,
the, if you're on the Facebook,
Yeah.
or the Twitter,
Yeah, if you're on the channel.
hey, that new dial-up thing they got,
That's it, yeah.
it might stick around.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Coach Robb, you can find our sports on YouTube. You can find us at Coach Robb Beams, and on social media, start with Coach Robb Beams, and we can drive you from there. But as always, David, it's always a pleasure to be with you.
Okay, this is our first one together in the studio, so Coach Robb number 30, we'll continue this out through summer. Coach Robb's got a lot of stuff going on, so make sure you sign up for that newsletter and follow him on his social media platforms, and especially his YouTube stuff. A lot of good information there. So peace, we'll see you